What up? It's your boy Big Facts here for another episode of YouReedMe. You can find us on YouTube at ReadMe Network or on Instagram at YouReedMe Network. Today we're talking about the NBA play-in games. Yesterday we had two 7 seeds decided. The Nets defeated the Cavs 115-108. The Nets will now face the Boston Celtics. And then we had the Wolves beating the Clippers. Now, even though the Wolves were the higher seed, I think this is kind of an upset. I expected the Clippers to beat them, but the Wolves are a dangerous team, especially in a one-and-done situation with their three-point shooting. They defeated the Clips 109-104, and they will now be facing the Memphis Grizzlies. So now the Cavs will go into the second portion of the play-in game, which is essentially an elimination game, and they'll be playing the winner of the Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets. And then the Clippers will be playing the winner of the Pelicans and the San Antonio Spurs. Those games will be happening tonight. Just to touch on that Cavs-Nets game, pretty good game. I mean, the Nets got a pretty sizable lead. I think they were up by like 15. I think at one point it might have been 20. But the Cavs were able to come back. It's pretty interesting. The Cavs came back by using some type of triangle 2 defense where they put two people just face guarding Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving coming up the court every play. It kind of left Bruce Brown in the middle of the court to take advantage of the defense. Now, Bruce Brown, most people might not know a lot about him, but he played for the Pistons a couple of times when they weren't that good. He was the point guard for them. He's been around the league, so he has a diverse skill set. So when they could get the ball to him in the middle, he kind of picked the Cavs apart, but the Cavs were pretty effective. I think if Darius Garland or Kevin Love would have hit a couple of those open threes when they down by 5, it could have been a different game. A lot of it also could have been just the Nets playing Kyrie and Kevin Durant for 41 minutes. I mean, they played this like an elimination game. They played heavy minutes. Kyrie was awesome. I mean, he went 12 for 12 before missing 3 shots. He had 34 points, 12 assists. Kevin Durant had 25 points, 11 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. But they also had Bruce Brown chip in with 18 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. The big men, they're pretty sturdy. Claxton played more minutes than Drummond. It seems like they do that a lot with Drummond playing a lot of the early minutes and Claxton playing late with his athleticism, his shot block, and his defense. He moves better on pick and rolls, so they've been using him a lot. Darius Garland was good in this game. He had 34 points, 5 assists. Kevin Love chipped in with 14 points, 13 rebounds, and Rondo had 19 assists. I think if they had Jared Allen in this game, it could have been a different game. He might play on Friday. I still think that the Cavs are the favorite to get the 8th seed. I thought that I like the Nets against the Boston Celtics. Now I'm not so sure, man. That depth is concerning, man. They can't play Durant and Kyrie Irving that long. And when they have the Boston Celtics is like the number 2 defense in the league, they don't have to do anything like a triangle 3 or anything like that. They can play them straight up with players like even Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. They got Al Horford. They will be missing Robert Williams, but this is a good team. Grant Williams. This is a good defensive team. They have some players that can wear the Nets down and play them straight up. So, I mean, I don't know. A lot of people are favoring the Nets just because of pure talents, but I think people might be sleeping on this Boston team, me included. So that'll be probably one of the better matchups in the playoffs, that 2-7 seed. Tough break for Boston to have to play the Nets in the first round, but I mean, I think it could be a good matchup. I think the Celtics can definitely win that matchup, but Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, that's always going to be a threat. That Clippers-Wolves game was a lot closer than I thought it would be, but as I said before, whenever you're in a one-and-done game, 3-point shooting can really change the game. You had D'Lo get hot, you had Anthony Edwards get hot, and you had Patrick Beverley just being the dog out there. Cat was in foul trouble most of the game, and that's one of the biggest concerns, that the Clippers weren't even able to take advantage of Cat's foul trouble, and they let the guards beat them. I thought that the Clippers would show some veteran leadership with some of their depth. That didn't come. Paul George did play great, but other than Reggie Jackson, they didn't get a lot of help from a lot of guys. I mean, Powell played well early, but down the stretch, he kind of fell apart. You didn't see much from Covington. You didn't see much from a lot of other players that should have stepped up. Now, they'll get another chance going against either winner of the New Orleans Pelicans and the San Antonio Spurs, but this Clippers team is definitely not as good as I thought they would be. Moving on to the elimination games that we have tonight, man. We have the Hawks versus the Hornets. That's going to be the first game. This is going to be a pretty exciting matchup. I mean, no one thought that the Hawks would be in this play-in game after their run last year. They surprised a lot of people. It didn't help that they've been missing John Collins since like early March, late February, something like that, with that foot injury. But this still is a dangerous team. I mean, we had Trae Young set history of being the second player, but the first player since like the 70s. Is only the second player to lead the NBA in total points and total assists. He's the first player since Tiny Archibald did it, and there's only been 2 players in history to do that. So that's pretty impressive for a guy that they didn't even think his game would translate to the NBA. And he did it also in college, and he did it in high school. Dude is dynamic. The Hornets are an exciting team, and it's the second year in the play-in game. They lost to the Indiana Pacers last year. They had a much better season. They won 10 more games than they did last year. Last year was a shortened season, and this year they went 82 games, and they won 10 more games than they did last year. They still ended up in the 10th spot. But they're a fast-paced team. This is going to be an exciting matchup because both teams like to go fast. They like to shoot threes. Exciting to watch. I still think the Hawks will pull this off, but the Hornets are dangerous, man. With Miles Bridges, he's probably the most improved player this year, man. You got him, you got LaMelo Ball, who's exciting. You got Terry Rozier, who can turn it on at any time. I'm not a fan of PJ Washington, but that small ball lineup has been the best for them. Hornets have won 11 of their 15 games, but the Hawks have won 12 of their 17 games. So they match up pretty nice. The last time they played, they tried to kind of blitz Trae Young, and they held him to one of his worst games of the season, but Trae Young was able to distribute and get 15 assists. I'm still leaning toward the Hawks just on their experience. I think that the Hornets are still probably a player away. They probably need to go away from the small ball, make a trade. But they are definitely growing and improving. But I like the Hawks in this game simply because of Trae Young and Clint Capella. The next matchup we have the Pelicans versus the San Antonio Spurs. Now, most of us thought that the Lakers would be in this spot, but the Spurs and the New Orleans Pelicans outplayed them. The trade for CJ McCollum for the Pelicans was probably the biggest move of the season for any team because they were really struggling. They were abysmal. Even without Zion Williams, CJ McCollum has been godsend for them, even though Brandon Ingram has struggled with injuries. Now that he's back, they're averaging like 119 points a game with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Jonas Valanciunas on the court. So even the stats that you see doesn't do this team justice. They can really be dangerous at times. But even with that said, the San Antonio Spurs have won 3 of the 4 games. The San Antonio Spurs are the youngest team in the playoffs. It's not the team that you would normally see from a San Antonio Spurs with like veterans. These are a bunch of young guys that play hard. You got DeJounte Murray, who I think is a young Westbrook, but with lockdown defender skills. You have Jacob Portal, who's a shot blocker, rim protector. You have people like Devin Vassell on the team, who's a two-way player that can score. Lonnie Walker. So they have a lot of different talent on this team, but they're still young and they can be a bit inconsistent. They still kind of struggle with outside shooting. That's why I kind of lean towards the Pelicans in this spot, just for the simple fact with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Jonas Valanciunas, they have a little bit more experience. They're a little bit more physical than the Spurs, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs gave them a good game or if they won. But in this game, I think I'm leaning toward the Pelicans. So I think the matchups, in my prediction, I think we're going to see the Cavs versus the Hawks on Friday and the Clippers versus the Pelicans. But I was 1 for 1 yesterday. Let's see if I can go 2 for 0 today. But that's been it for YouReedMe. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Peace.